everybody and welcome back to my Gargantua adventure. Now that we got that big ship in orbit, we need to put something in it, and in order to do that we send another rocket up in typical Kerbal Space Program fashion, spinning around. Yes. So yeah, we got a 2,500 ton ship in orbit and it needs something that it can deliver. Where is it going to deliver it? We shall see. But first we have to get the main payload, there it is, into a stable orbit and then towards the main ship. I'm going to skip ahead through that orbiting process because you know how it works anyways. So here we are already in close vicinity of the mighty cruiser Gargantua. And yeah, maybe I can try to lower my voice even further with some additional effects, but yeah. We are trying to get this thing aboard. Now, time to open the cargo bays. Yay. This is a bit tedious since there is no way to action group that limiter for the bay doors, but I'm not complaining. Okay, time to decouple the first part of the payload. There it is. And as you can see, those are 4 wheels. Curious. Okay, but now we're going to have to get that into the cargo bay, and once again my port alignment indicator is helping with that. Okay. We are once again trying to get over a little bit faster since the docking process was really slow, especially with the frame rate I was experiencing, which was very, very low. So, as always, this is sped up to about 4 times regular speed. And we are now trying to fit this thing inside the cargo bay. And it's a little bit wider than the opening itself, but that doesn't matter because we can spin it around a little bit, like this. Yeah, something like that, yeah. Okay. And now we should be fine, at least the indicator tells me I'm very close to my main docking port. And magnetic locks engaging. Boom, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Time to get the second thing up there, and this is also a very curious little gizmo. What it will do, well, I'm not going to spoil the surprise for you yet, but you will find out what it will do in a future episode. But first we have to get it into the huge cargo bay of the Gargantua. And this is fairly easy because it really fits nicely through the door and also hooks up quite easily towards the docking port. There we go. Okay, time for the main payload. There it is, you can see this thing is suited for people. But what is it for? Which planet or which moon? Let's see. But first, once again, we have to get it on board. And since this is a little bit heavier and the frame rate was really, really low, I kinda skip ahead again. So we are now almost inside the cargo bay. Look at that. It almost looks a little bit like a whale or something. No, it's not intended to swim. First it's going in there. It's going to be a tight fit, I have to admit. This was really fiddling around with the RCS systems to get this thing on board, which was not made easier by the slow performance of the game due to the massive part count of Gargantua. And of course, well, the part count increased with every piece I brought on board. So we are now looking at about, I don't know, Gargantua itself is 965 parts, and this here, well, it now has to have something above 1100 or 1200 parts. So yeah, a lot of parts for KSP to calculate with. And we have docked our main payload. Perfect, and now the cargo bays appear to be full. But no, we still have something to deliver, and of course you have seen here, it is the crew. But not only the crew, but also some other stuff that hides inside this vehicle. First we have to ditch the solid rocket boosters once they've burned out, there we go. And then we are going to head up into the upper atmosphere and into orbit. Now this is the final vehicle. And this is going to orbit around the planet and then of course a rendezvous with Gargantua. Funny thing is, I almost got, well, not almost, I got an encounter with my orbiting burn, so this kind of reduced the time I had to do some transfer orbits to get to a rendezvous point. And now we're already there at the ship, matching velocities. So now we are really close and we're heading towards it and braking, of course, so we don't crash into it. Okay. Since this crew vehicle has a docking port and Gargantua also offers a docking port, well, what other course of action should there be than to dock those things together to get the crew from vehicle A to vehicle B? I'm not going to EVA all of those Kerbals over there, because there's about 12 of them. No, 16. Sorry, 12 was a little bit underestimated. Those are about 16 Kerbals that I'm going to put on the Gargantua. Okay, closing in now. You're seeing here now the fruits of a very arduous labor process, because not only was it a hassle to transfer all of those Kerbals, I had about a bazillion crashes during, well, every performance, every maneuver I performed with Gargantua. It's really stressing the system. Okay, now we have two other things that I'm going to bring aboard. There we go, number one. Once again, skipped ahead a bit because fiddling around with it to get it into that opening, since it's a really tight fit, it was a bit of a mess, and also it is dark, so this is not really interesting to look at. I apologize for that. But we're already on a good trajectory. You may notice that the docking port alignment indicator mod appearance has changed. That is because it has been updated and now has a new user interface. But it still works perfectly for what I am using it. And I have skipped ahead a bit towards a part of the orbit where we are actually in sunlight. For your viewing pleasure only. Okay, second part of the payload of the crew transfer vehicle. There we go, we're heading over there. And once again skipping ahead a bit so you can just enjoy the important bits of what I did with this vehicle. Okay. So once again trying to thread the needle. Which is odd considering it is a 2.5 meter needle. Let's move on. Okay, closing up the cargo bays, disengaging the docking port, and then of course getting this thing deorbited, because we don't need it anymore and I am too lazy to land it somewhere safely. Or even construct it in such a way that I would be capable of landing somewhere safely. Okay, trying to not hit the Gargantua while deorbiting, there we go. And yeah, the Gargantua is now ready for departure. Or is it? Because I had an idea and yeah, I misstaged. And I also installed Scatterer and environmental visual enhancements, which makes the game way more beautiful. Look at that. The ocean and lighting effects of Scatterer and the volumetric clouds of the environmental visual enhancement mod, they really add to the game, and I really wish that Squad would be able to implement something like that in the stock game. Little hint, get those mod developers on the team. Okay, look at that. Now that is beautiful. That's how a space simulation game should look like. Perfect. Okay, now this is heading up high into the atmosphere, still on our first stage on our main engine. And this is of course a Vector, the one with the most gimbal capabilities and also very high thrust output. Very versatile and capable engine, the Vector. And now it is time to ditch that booster. There we go. Shroud opening, Sephitrons engaging, and we are now on our second stage. But before we look at what happens with the second stage, let's talk about what I mentioned before earlier, reusability, or landing a first stage or any vehicle that went into orbit back on Earth. So you may have already heard that SpaceX managed to land 3 rockets safely on the ground or on water. So I tried to kind of emulate something like that, and for reasons unknown to me it started to spin wildly, and yeah. The lower part of the rocket, that cone-shaped tank, it's just for the re-entry or landing maneuvers only, and since I couldn't be bothered with constructing a barge and hitting that perfectly, I just landed into water. No damage whatsoever, so yay! Perfect. Okay, now back into the second stage. Back to the second stage and almost into orbit, of course. So since the fairing is heating up and apparently everything under the fairing is also heating up, I think it's time to ditch that thing. Just adjusting our apoaps a little bit. And boom! There we go. It's a tiny lander. So what might I use this for? Curious. Okay, we're heading up to our apoaps. Look at that, the clouds, the effects. This is what a space game should look like. Wonderful. Okay, now moving on and using our maneuver node. And yeah, well, I tried to use those mods also in combination with Gargantua, but I crashed a lot. So I reverted back to standard graphics. Look at how boring they look compared to the glorious effects of Scatterer and EVE, but yeah. Now it's time to get this lander thingy on board, and you may have already guessed that this was a bit of an afterthought, because the cargo bay is now, as big as it is, it's really cramped now. I still did not want to get that big main cargo thing, the big payload, out of the cargo bay to make room for the small lander, so I thought I could wheel this thing around it, and to my delight, it worked. So there's enough space between the cargo in the front and the cargo in the back, so I can put this thing between them. There we go. And this is looking good. This is looking good. Of course, the docking indicator mod is helping me a lot, as usual, but this was really eyeballing it mainly. Okay, now we're on the big stretch towards the docking port, skipping ahead a bit because the video is already too long. Sorry about that. And now we are almost docked, almost there, and boom! Perfect. Okay, now the one thing that remains to do is closing up the cargo bay doors, and then of course time warping towards, oh well, first we have to deorbit this thing so we don't crash into it in a future orbit. There we go. And well, let's see where we're headed in the next episode. So thanks for watching. Goodbye.